Welcome to Aspire to Lead, where we empower educators and school leaders to grow, inspire, and thrive. I'm your host, Joshua Stamper, author, speaker, and leadership coach, bringing you conversations that spark transformation, challenge the status quo in education, and equip you to make a lasting impact on your campus or in your district. For more information and resources, visit joshstamper.com as we're looking to ascend to new leadership heights together. All right, Aspire leaders, welcome back. I have a wonderful guest who is an Australian educator. He's a leader, executive coach, speaker, and author with over 35 years of leadership experience. Brad Gaynor, thank you so much for joining me here on Aspire to Lead.
My pleasure, Joshua. It's great to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and to your listeners. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Yes. Well, I know it's bright and early out where you are, very far away from where I'm at, but I would love for you just to share a little bit about your educational and leadership journey.
Well, I've been in education for 35 years. Started off as a teacher, became a leader quite early, which is probably in hindsight not a great thing. So I became a leader sort of, I think, in my fifth year of teaching, and then ended up leading 4 schools as a principal, 4 primary schools. Got into the national scene, so I was president of the Australian Catholic Primary Principals Association for a number of years, and involved on the board of the Australian Primary Principals. So it's sort of the national group that looks after principals. And then, the last 5 years ago, I moved into head office. So now I'm sort of a system leader where I oversee what we call a network, which I think you call like a district. So I look after a district of schools, so to speak. And in that time, I've started blogging and writing, and I've had 2 books released in the last 6 months, which is just crazy. So that's sort of where I'm at and where I'm up to. And so now I'm just sort of trying to support my big slant, I suppose, is just trying to support leaders, especially their well-being and their workload, and to prevent them from burnout. So hence I'm sort of like trying to get the word out as much as possible.
Yeah, and that'll be the driving force behind our conversation today. I did pick up, you said I was a young leader, and then you didn't know if that was a good thing. I was a young leader myself.
Yeah.
I definitely had some trials and tribulations through that journey. And I know a lot of people looked at me and was like, you have a baby face, so you can't be the leader of the school. What was your trials, and why did you think it was a hard time for yourself?
So not so much at the time. At the time, I actually thought it was a plus. I was so energetic, and I was a principal in my early 30s, and I sort of grew with the community that I was in, with the parents were the same age as me, their kids were the same age as my kids. So I really grew. So at the time, I thought it was actually a bonus, and I was quite connected to the communities I led because I was sort of similar ages to the kids. And in fact, some of the kids that were at my schools are now my friends' kids. So it's quite bizarre. It wasn't really till later. It wasn't really till I felt that I was burning out, that I realized I'd been doing it for 20 years. And what next? What was I going to do? I know I needed a break. I knew I'd had enough. Didn't fully understand why until I'd stopped. And then, so sort of just, I suppose in hindsight, I'm saying, I think I wouldn't recommend anyone rush into leadership. Let it grow. I mean, I certainly grew into it in 4 schools. I had a great time. But at the point, I think I burnt myself out. And I just wanted to prevent others from doing the same.
So what were some of those symptoms that you started to see at that 20-year mark where you noticed that you were burning out?
I think it was like a sense of tiredness, but not tiredness that a good sleep or a holiday was fixing. I was just constantly tired. I found my brain just constantly thinking. I was constantly overthinking, probably sort of like a bit of a decision fatigue, I suppose you could say. Certainly wasn't sleeping. I just felt myself getting annoyed at things, like things that never would have bothered me in the past, started to frustrate me. I knew something wasn't 100% right. I wasn't making the decision. I wasn't as clear. I started to avoid certain things that were people that were oh God, I'm just going to leave you alone, sort of thing. At the time, I didn't understand, but I thought I need a break. So I basically stopped. And it wasn't until afterwards that I realized I'd had a bit of a breakdown, I suppose you could call it, and then started to research and look into why and what it all meant. And that's the book came from that.
We'll definitely talk about the book From Burnout to Breakthrough, because I know this journey is probably a fixture in that book.
Yeah.
And I know you said like a holiday or a weekend wouldn't really help. And I think that's what happens is like, I hear these buzz terms like resilience or, looking for a quick fix to get folks to get on the other side of burnout. But for you, what was some of the hopeful, practical solution that really got you to sustain in the job?
So when I realized this is not good was during COVID, because I actually enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed going to school and no one was there. I was sort of on my own most of the days because I just found more comfortable working from there. But afterwards, I realised that I don't believe in work-life balance. I think that's almost an impossible achievement, so to speak. In fact, it's something I'm sort of really sort of starting to investigate more. So I realised I probably wasn't integrating my life and my work enough. And I think trying to achieve a balance is impossible. So for me afterwards, it was, okay, I need to recalibrate this a little bit. I was so work-focused, and it was almost like my personal life, my family came second. And that was, obviously I realised that later I probably had it so wrong. One of the work I do now with leaders is, you've got to integrate. There are times where your work is going to be full on. It's report season or it's parent interviews or whatever. Yep, that's going to take a lot of your time, going to be a few nights late that week. But then the following week, you recalibrate. Okay, I'm going to focus on the family. I'll make sure I drop the kids off to school or whatever. So I think finding that sort of how life and your work can integrate was a big thing. For me, it was definitely fitness, health, eating properly, really focusing on my sleep and having other interests. Really, I had other interests. Work was my whole focus. So I make sure now I do all those exercises and things, but I'm interested in art, I'm interested in writing, I read a lot. So I'm just sort of making sure I've got other interests that keep me sort of, I suppose, content in everything that I do.
So for folks that are feeling this right now, if they're looking for a wonderful resource to help them through this, we had talked about the Burnout to Breakthrough book of yours, what is it that's going to help them as far as a resource to make sure that they're recovering and getting on the other side of this burnout feeling?
To me, it's about what I said. It's really about making sure that in the book, I talk a little bit about sort of really starting to recognize what the issue is. So actually, what am I doing that's not fulfilling me, or what am I doing that's making me tired? Really recognize what the root cause is. And actually, I think we're sometimes frightened to sort of really be honest with ourselves and really name what it is. So I think once you start to name it, then you can start to sort of really investigate, well, why am I doing? Why is that happening? What are the conditions that I'm doing behind it? And then to me, it's really about realigning. Like, okay, all these things that I'm doing and I'm feeling or whatever, where does it sort of fit with my moral compass, with my ethical boundaries? Do I need to realign a little bit? So it's actually really going through some steps of, okay, I need to realign here. What am I going to do? For me, I knew that I needed to stop. That was my realignment. I knew I needed to stop. And then then I say, okay, well, once you've done all that and you've sort of aligned yourself and you know what you want to do, then you reinvent yourself a little bit. So in my case, it was move out of the school and into the system. But for someone, it could be moving schools, or it could be trying to lead differently with a different purpose or a different focus, and being really conscious of what you're doing. And actually, I suppose really trying to be conscious about what you're doing and be quite intentional with what you're doing, and make everything that you do matter for yourself and for the people that you work with.
Yeah, I think this is a great bridge, about people that you work with, right? Because we're talking about the individual leader, but as we know, this feeling of overwhelm, stress, burnout, put in the adjective that you want that people are feeling, that is also a huge driver of people leaving the profession. And that's not just leaders, but it's teachers. So, as you're looking at retention and kind of this workforce crisis, what are you helping educators do to, make sure that they're staying and then also revitalizing the world of education so we don't have this drought?
I think one of the first things we have to do is the whole thing of sort of psychological safety. We've got to make people feel safe in their work environment, in their lives, really. So I think that's a definite, is really focus on the culture of the community in which as a leader you're building. That's not necessarily easy. And I think I'm doing a bit of work at the moment with the difference between climate and culture. So people see the climate and feel the climate, but culture is often the things that you don't necessarily see and feel, and it's the sort of the undercurrent thing. So doing a lot of work on that space. So I think it's about trying to create a environment where staff feel safe, and I think that's really important. I also do think it's about workload, definitely, and I think we need to look at how we can reduce workload in terms of all the paperwork and compliance. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but we've gone so far the other way where I think teachers are spending more time documenting what they're doing than actually teaching. And I think we really need to look at how we can reduce that. I think there's some work to be done with educating parents a little bit more. I think, where the teacher was the trust of whatever the teacher said goes, that's shifted. And I think there's some work to be done with educating parents on how to work with in partnership with the teacher. It's become very much some of the emails I see the aggressive emails from parents. I think there's a whole bit of work there to be done there with supporting parents. Another area that I'm finding teachers are really struggling with is behaviour needs, complex needs in kids, trauma-related students. I mean, that's everywhere. But I don't think you necessarily come out of university with a degree in behaviour psychology or trauma management. And I think there's some work to be done there to support teachers. So I think it's really naming what the issues are and then trying to do something about them. I think we just keep talking, but we're not actually doing something about it. And that's why teachers, good teachers, great teachers, are walking, because of all of those sort of things together. It's not one particular thing. I don't think it's one thing. It's a lot of things. And that's why I think we're across the world, we're seeing a shortage of teachers. Well, in fact, I don't think there's a shortage of teachers. I think there's a shortage of teachers coming through universities. Absolutely. We don't have that depth coming through. But I think there's a lot of people who are just choosing not to teach. You know, I loved it. And if I could just be with the kids, I'd be fine. But it's all the other things that have come with it and the complexities that I think that's driving people away from actually teaching.
Oh, for sure. It's that desire. I once desired it and now I don't. And it's not like you said, the people have the skills, they have the degrees, they exist, they're out there. It's just they choose not to,
which is really sad.
Very sad. So I want to touch on the parent community piece because you highlighted just a little bit of that. And I just want to go a little bit further. But, you know, for those who are listening, if they're leaders on a campus or a district, they're policymakers, or maybe they're even community members, you know, what is their role as far as rebuilding that professional trust that used to exist but doesn't anymore, and create that culture that supports teachers?
Yeah, I think part of it comes back to that culture. I think there's going to be that culture of trust. I think there's got to be some really, really open communication and honest communication. And I don't mean, you know, fancy newsletters or all that sort of thing, but I think definitely got to communicate to parents and build their knowledge. I think if parents feel they know what's going on, they're fine. It's when they don't know or it's been miscommunicated or it's not clear. So I think there's got to be a lot of work with parents done on effective communication and parent voice. I'm not saying involve parents in every decision in the school, but certainly have some representatives where, you know, you're understanding the parents. And I think too, one of the things I work with a lot of my early career principals is presence. It's just actually being out there in the mornings, being out there in the afternoons, and actually people seeing you there helps build that trust. You don't want to be stuck in your office filling out paperwork. You actually want to be seen, especially those key times when parents are moving in and out of the school. You know, that's where you have those conversations. That's where that communication can happen on the fly. That's where they can ask that question. They feel comfortable with you. They see you, they hear you talking to the kids, they hear you interacting or whatever. That helps build the trust. So definitely communication, definitely presence. And I think actually pushing back on some of the behaviours that we're seeing. You know, you get some aggressive parents physically, you're getting parents being quite aggressive in emails. And I think it's actually pushing back and saying, as a leader, you could protect your staff, especially the young ones who, are struggling to get around the classroom, let alone dealing with parents. So I think it's having mechanisms and procedures in the school to support them. And sometimes it's, I've had to do it myself, call a parent and say, hang on a second, I think you're out of line. Let's talk this through. I'm not going to have a go at you and abuse you. Let's talk this through. And sometimes just getting to the truth of the matter and actually communicating and building that clarity helps. But I think we've got to push back a little bit and not just sit there and take it all.
Yeah, we got to be the shield to our teachers. And that goes back to what you were saying before, which is feeling safe. If a teacher doesn't feel safe and protected, then that's obviously going to build mistrust, which is the opposite of what you were talking about. And then that feeds into that culture and being extremely negative. So as a leader, that's huge.
Absolutely. I think the other thing we've got to do is give some teachers back their dignity. I think, and I write about this in my second book, I think we've got to give them, some time dignity. We've got to actually appreciate the time they put in their work and give them time to do their work. I think we've got to listen to their voice a lot more and actually involve. So I think we often tell teachers what we want them to do, but we need to be listening to them a lot more. I think, definitely workloads, some dignity around their workload. And that sort of, I think, behaviour stuff, I think is just, seems to be really getting out of hand. So I think it's giving them some dignity around this is how you manage behaviour by parents, behaviour by students, and giving them the skills to be able to work their way through it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that second book. It's brand new. You said you've done 2 books in 6 months. Is that correct?
The first one was a couple of years in the making. That was sort of it's really my own journey. So I sort of talk about my own burnout and how I went through it. And then in hindsight, I could see how I went through it. So that's the first book. The first book was a couple of years in the making. The second book, Not One More Teacher Lost, wrote itself, to be honest. There was a Facebook post about 12 months ago where it just said, just pay teachers more. To solve the problem about teacher shortage and everything, just pay them more. And I was like, that's not what it's about. So I had a rant on my own Facebook page about, how I disagreed, and it's all these other things. I had so many people, teachers, obviously, because I've got lots of teacher friends, said, can you unlock it from your Facebook? I want to share it with my friend in Sydney. I want to share it with my friend in New Zealand or whatever. So I did that, and then it just went literally viral. And 3 days later, I got a call from the papers saying, can we put it in as an opinion piece, sort of in response to this article that was in the newspaper. And then I just got inundated with just people sharing their stories. The young teachers talking about how they're already, they want to leave in their first year or so because of the parents and the behaviour and the workload. And older teachers just saying how much it's shifted and changed. So just lots and lots of stories kept coming my way. So then I started to think, okay, there's something in this. So I actually was talking to my publisher because they were saying, okay, what are you going to do next? And I had these other ideas. I said, but this is something that sort of organically seems to be happening, and they just jumped on it. So it was meant to come out in 2027, but because the first book's been fairly successful, they said, we want to fast track it. And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, well, what was meant to be next year's come out is actually just being released. So in that book, I talk a lot about, I suppose, the reasons why. I try to name it, what actually is happening in classrooms today. So a lot of teacher voice. So a lot of those snippets that people gave me in emails or conversations, I've actually put in the book. I've de-identified them, obviously, but I've actually put actual quotes in the book from real teachers, but then surrounded it with research. So it's not just, this is a random thought, but actually this is why. So the book is really just about trying to represent the voice of teachers, to be honest. And it went from there. So that one didn't take very long to write because it almost wrote itself.
Well, yeah, the social media storm. So thankfully, there's good things that occur on social media. Sometimes we look at the negative, but what were some of the things that teachers were bringing up to you, with the sharing a post or reaching out to you to get this going?
It was definitely all those things. It was definitely about the workload, and that they felt they were caught up so much in paperwork and trying to prove what they were teaching, and that was taking away from actually teaching. So it's definitely the workload. It was definitely the behaviour of students, the complex needs of students. So not necessarily behaviour, but disabilities and having to write personalised plans and all those things. Which no teacher. I mean, every teacher wants to welcome and support every student in their class, but when you're trying to justify what you're doing by writing about it, let alone actually doing it, I think is a concern. Parents, the lack of trust in the profession at the moment, in society, I think has changed. So that was a big thing. I mean, just general treatment by, say HR in some instances really concerns people. The lack of that psychological safety, the media attention on education, that it's teachers' fault, or okay, we'll just let schools do it. And it's like, well, you keep piling things onto us. We're teaching about consent now. We're doing road safety, and we're doing swimming lessons, and we're doing all these things that I think used to be a parent responsibility that schools are now taking on, and all those things. Like I said, it's not just one thing. It was just so many things, and I just thought I've got to speak up about this and actually start to sort of get the narrative out there. And that was the purpose.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll make sure that the link is in the show notes for folks, because both obviously are very important topics, different, but very important.
Yeah. And that's all I try to do in my writing and the blogs is just speak the truth and what I see is my truth, and just try to generate the conversation. I don't want to have a go at anyone. I'm not blaming anybody or anything like that. And in this book in particular, I actually say, well, this is the sort of things that teachers can do. This is the sort of things that leaders can do. This is the sort of things that systems can do. And I even have a chapter on, I think, what politicians should do. So, if people read that, I might start getting into trouble. But I just try to name the truth, really, and be the voice of teachers.
I love it. Well, you do have a broad amount of writing. You also have some advocacy work. So I'd love for you to speak on that, because, you're trying to, like we've talked about, sustain leadership. You're looking at the well-being of leaders. You're looking at burnout. So what are some other topics that you love writing about?
Lately, I've sort of recently been writing about this whole idea of presence, the whole psychological safety. I think is something. It's a bit of a buzzword, but I don't think we necessarily understand it. So, trying to sort of put some frame around that, and gratitude. Gratitude's something that I don't think we It's really sad. I actually went to a funeral recently, and I actually wrote about it with my last blog. So it was a colleague who had been my mentor as a young teacher, and we became close friends. And actually, we were both principals at the same time. Anyway, she passed away, and the first principal I ever worked for was at the funeral, and I had not seen her for like 20 years. And I just hit me the profound impact she had on me as a young leader, as a young teacher, and saw things in me before I saw them in myself. And I thought, I don't think I've ever told her. I don't think I've ever actually said thank you. So I did. So I went up, and like she was excited to see me. I was excited to see her, and then at the wake we had a really big conversation, and I just shared that gratitude. And I don't think we do that enough. I don't think we look at and thank the people in our lives that do support us to be the leaders we want to be the teachers we want to be. So yeah, so I think gratitude is something that I'm sort of really starting to think about. How can we do that without making it sort of, I don't know, tokenistic, so to speak, and how can we actually be grateful for what we've got? Because, life, as I've discovered recently, life's too short, and we've got a lot to be grateful for. And being a teacher and being a principal, I think, is a gift. It's a gift to society, and I think we need to support each other in that and recognise it.
Yeah, for sure.
But a lot of it's about definitely around the leadership space and dignity and all that sort of thing is sort of what I'm really trying to promote. Just trying to make the profession that we all love sustainable for everybody.
Sustainable, yeah. So important. Brad, I love this conversation. I really don't want it to stop, but I want an actual item. I ask this of all my guests is, if there's something our aspiring or current leaders can do, and this could be a part of some of the topics that we touched on today or something completely different, but I would love for them to not only take notes, but actually go and do something. So what would you recommend for them to do to enhance their leadership journey?
I want to get practical. I don't want to get theoretical. Things like time blocking, like actually block out, as I'm doing some of this with my leaders at the moment, is actually block out some time as a leader, so I'm saying from this perspective, look at your diary and block some time out each week. So that could be time to read, it could be time to finish something that, you keep getting interrupted, that sort of thing. So I think that's a really valuable thing, is actually blocking some time out in your calendar and saying, sorry, I'm no go. I mean, you're sort of, there's other leaders around, go to them, but this is my time where I'm really focusing on a project, or I'm going to read, I'm going to write, or whatever. So that's, I think, really important is time blocking. And I think really making time for that physical support, physical health, that mental health, all that sort of exercise, I think is something you've just got to do. I know we say, I can't be bothered, I haven't got time, but you feel better, and it brings you not only physical fitness, but it brings you mental clarity too, which I think is really, really important. So those sort of things I think are really just important. And also prioritizing, like actually there are some things we don't have to do it all today. And I think we feel like as leaders and teachers, we've got to get it done. We've got to get it done today. So I think it's really is a matter of prioritizing. Go, okay, what can I do now? What can I do later? I wrote a piece recently about sometimes I think we do a task and we don't necessarily have the time. So it's a matter of looking at the time and going, okay, I've got 10 minutes. What can I achieve in this 10 minutes? Well, it's no point me starting that because I won't finish it, but I can do that. So that's on your list, do that. So rather than trying to get tasks done, is actually looking at the time and matching the task to the time. So I think that sort of thing, just trying to work a little bit smarter. And also too, I think, ask for help. Like we all don't know everything. And I think this whole thing that we've got to be the best of everything is false. So I think it's a matter of just talking to your colleagues. I'm talking about colleagues in other schools, so your peers, so to speak, but I'm also people on staff. And look, how can you delegate? I mean, part of a leader's job, I think, is to identify other leaders. And I don't think you're a leader unless you've identified and built other leaders. So look at the people around you. Okay, well, that person's a young person. I mean, it happened to me. This principal I was talking to you about saw something in me early on and pushed me to do some further study at the time. So look around and see where you can build other leaders. I think is important. And I think the biggest thing that is also, it's okay to be vulnerable. I have this heroic leadership issue where I think, you're meant to be like Superman to be a principal or to be a leader in a school. And I think, yes, I'm sure you've got to be strong and you've got to be determined, you've got to have vision and be driven and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's okay to be vulnerable. So I'm saying to a lot of my leaders now, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to sometimes be yourself. And if you're not in the right headspace, say that. I'm not having a great day. I've got this on my mind, or this is happening in my life. I just need some time to really just focus on this at the moment. And that comes back to that whole work-life integration thing I was talking about. But being vulnerable, and I think if people see that you're vulnerable, that that personal connection occurs, that relationship is built, and then that trust. Because if they see the leader being vulnerable, well, it's okay for me to be vulnerable too.
Yeah, those are great pieces of advice. So I hope everyone takes note and is going to implement that immediately. Brad, I've been flashing your website, but for our YouTube audience, but for those who are listening on the podcast platform, what's the best way to get more information about you and also connect with you on social media?
We'll definitely go to my website because that's got all the details on there. So yeah, you've got it there, or just Google my name in Australia and hopefully it will come up. And my books are available through Routledge or Taylor and Francis, so you can always Google them as well. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. What else? There's Twitter, not X, I think they call it now, and Instagram. I'm on all the main socials. But I'm also very happy just to receive an email or a phone call and talk things through. And that came about also actually with some of the book. I had people. There was one person in particular who sent a very long email, and I could sense was really, really struggling. So I actually said, do you actually want to connect on? So we actually had a Teams meeting with face-to-face, and I just listened to her. So I'm happy to do that too, because I think sometimes you just need someone who can listen and not necessarily judge, not necessarily comment, but just listen. I think that's where the coaching, I know you do a lot of that as well. I think some of that coaching aspect is really important. So yeah, all those things, happy to connect in any way that suits.
Wonderful. Well, we'll have all of that in the show notes for folks. Even Brad's email, he's been generous enough to provide that for folks. So if you're listening, you want to connect with Brad and reach out for anything, of course, he's an amazing resource. I want you to grab those books too. If you're a leader, there's a book for you. If you're a teacher, there's a book for you too. I know there's a lot of folks in various forms or titles and people all around the world listening. So these are wonderful resources that I want you to grab. With that, Brad, I'm so happy that we were able to connect via online, even though you're a million miles away from me. It's great to connect here in this space and learn from your journey.
Well, look, thank you. It's a small world, and while we're miles apart, here we are having a conversation online. So I think it's a joy. It's been a blessing having a conversation with you. And I just, like I said, I think I love the title Aspire to Lead, and I think anything I can do to support other leaders and other people, no matter where they live in the world, is a privilege. And yeah, I'm also happy to travel. Anytime people want me to come to the States, I'm happy to come up. But yeah, no, I'm happy to connect in any way and support anyone I can. I really appreciate the work you're doing to support leaders and educators. So thank you.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.